The air is thick with anticipation. A storm is brewing that could shatter everything you thought you knew about Bai Lu and Dylan Wang. Secrets, betrayal, and a past they thought was buried are all coming to a head. Get ready for a raw, emotional confrontation as the truth finally demands to be heard. The air was heavy with an unspoken storm as Bai Lu stepped onto the set that day. She was dressed in muted tones, her hair tied back in a way that made her sharp eyes even more striking. Every step she took echoed against the polished studio floor, pulling the attention of everyone present. They all knew something had shifted in the atmosphere. The whispers from the crew were hushed but constant, each one weaving its way into the tension that seemed to wrap itself around the two stars like an invisible chain. Across the room, Dylan Wang stood with his back turned, speaking in low tones to the director. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but those who had seen him earlier knew better. There was a stiffness in his movements, a quiet edge to his voice, as if he was bracing himself for something he could not stop. When his eyes finally found hers across the distance, it was not the look of two co-stars greeting each other. It was something else entirely. Something layered with old history, with words left unsaid for far too long. The last time they had shared a public moment together had been months ago, an award show night that ended with both of them leaving through separate exits. The images had gone viral, fans dissecting every frame. Some claimed they caught a fleeting expression of hurt on Bai Lu's face. Others swore Dylan's jaw had tightened as she walked away. That night had planted the seeds of speculation, but what was happening now felt different. As Bai Lu moved closer, the room seemed to fall silent. Even the clattering of equipment from the far corner came to a stop. She paused just a few feet from him, her gaze unwavering. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, aware that whatever was about to happen was not scripted. Dylan shifted his weight, his eyes briefly flicking away as if searching for an escape that did not exist. "You really thought this wouldn't come back?" Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable steel beneath it. The words hit the air like a spark in dry grass. Dylan's expression barely changed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something, regret, or perhaps recognition of the moment he had been trying to avoid. He stepped forward, closing the gap between them, his voice low enough that only those closest could hear. "This isn't the place," he murmured. But Bai Lu did not step back. Instead, she took a slow breath, her eyes glistening with something raw and unguarded. "You left me to carry it alone. And now everyone knows." Somewhere in the shadows near the lighting rigs, someone's phone camera caught the scene. The frame trembled slightly, but the intensity was unmistakable. Two people standing just inches apart, caught between past and present, between pride and the aching weight of everything unsaid. In the hours that followed, the clip began to spread online. The hashtags burned their way across every platform, fans arguing over what had truly happened between them. Some claimed it was all a performance, a clever way to stir interest in their upcoming project. Others were certain it was real, that the pain in Bai Lu's voice could not be faked. But what the cameras missed was what happened after the lights were turned off. When most of the crew had gone, Bai Lu was still there, sitting on a low bench just outside the studio, her hands clasped tightly together. The rain had started to fall, soft at first, then heavier. Dylan emerged quietly, holding an umbrella. He stood beside her for a long moment, neither of them speaking. Finally, he lowered himself to sit next to her, the umbrella tilting just enough to cover them both. "You don't have to believe me," he said, his voice almost lost in the rain, "but I never stopped thinking about it. About you." Bai Lu's eyes stayed on the pavement, the rainwater gathering into small shimmering pools. Her silence was not refusal, but it was not forgiveness either. The moment would never make it online. It would remain theirs alone, a quiet fragment of truth in a world that demanded spectacle. And yet, for those who had witnessed the confrontation earlier, the image of them under that umbrella would linger like a question with no answer. And the whispers would continue. The sound of footsteps echoed softly against the polished studio floor as Bai Lu moved closer to Dylan. She did not rush. Every step felt deliberate, like each one carried years of unspoken pain and the weight of moments she could no longer bury. The air between them was thick with a kind of electricity that made the hair on the back of your neck stand. Conversations in the room had ceased long ago, but the silence was not peaceful. It was charged, like the air before a storm. Dylan's eyes followed her approach. His posture was still, but his hands betrayed him, fingers curling slightly as if bracing himself for impact. He looked at her the way someone might look at an approaching wave, knowing it will crash over them no matter how much they wish to stand firm. Lu stopped just a few feet away. The lights from the set cast a soft glow on her face, highlighting the tension in her jaw, the faint tremor in her breath. She had rehearsed this confrontation in her head countless times, the words she would use, the tone she would carry, but now that the moment had arrived, it felt different. The memories came rushing back faster than she could contain them. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but steady. She spoke of the early days, when they had shared secrets under the muted glow of late-night streetlights, when laughter came easily and trust was their unspoken agreement. She reminded him of a promise he had once made, a promise to always stand beside her no matter the cost. Her words painted vivid scenes, moments only they knew, and each one was a shard of glass pressed gently but painfully into the space between them. Dylan stood motionless, absorbing each sentence without interruption. His gaze never left her, but there was a shift, a flicker of something in his eyes that betrayed the calm mask he wore. Regret, maybe longing, or perhaps both, tangled together in a way that made them impossible to separate. As she spoke, Lu's voice began to waver. She recalled the day everything changed, when whispers began to circle around them, whispers she had ignored at first because she believed him. But then came the moment that shattered that belief, a moment she had never been able to forget. She described it in detail, her tone sharpening with each word, her heart clearly still bleeding from the wound it left behind. Dylan finally inhaled, his first real movement since she began. His voice was low, almost rough, when he spoke. He told her there were truths she never knew, things he had hidden not to deceive her, but to protect her. He explained that some choices were never meant to be understood in the moment, that sometimes silence was the only way to shield someone from a storm they could not weather. Lu's expression shifted. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but they were not the tears of someone ready to forgive. They were the tears of someone whose trust had been fractured so deeply that no amount of explanation could instantly repair it. Her breathing grew uneven, as though every word he spoke only deepened the divide between them. The room seemed to grow colder. A light breeze from the overhead vents brushed against them, yet neither moved. The space between them was small, but it felt like a chasm. Crew members shifted uncomfortably in the background, sensing that they were witnessing something too raw to be interrupted. When Dylan took a step closer, Lu did not retreat. His eyes searched hers, as though looking for a sign that the bond they once shared was still buried somewhere beneath the hurt. His hand twitched at his side, a silent battle playing out within him about whether to reach for her or keep his distance. Lu's voice, now quieter but edged with steel, cut through the silence. She told him that protecting someone by hiding the truth was still a betrayal, that what he thought was shielding her had only left her vulnerable to an even greater pain. Her words were like the final tightening of a knot. There was no slack left, no room to escape. Dylan's lips parted as if to respond, but he hesitated. And in that hesitation, something shifted. The tension was no longer just about the past. It was about the undeniable pull between them that neither wanted to acknowledge, but both could feel. It was dangerous, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. Everyone in the room knew this was not the end. This was merely the opening crack in a wall that had been built for years. And once it came down, there would be no way to control what would come rushing through.